Hello everyone, and welcome to our second SheTalks of the year, Lead Without Limits, where we focus on women in STEM and the obstacles they deal with being in this male dominated field. A little bit about myself. My name is Biljot, and I'm one of the organizing members from She Leads. And with me today is our project lead, Angelique, who will take us through a land acknowledgement.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. The way that we start all our events with She Leads with Enactus is with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that today everyone is tuning in from various different places. I see all over Ontario. Some people may be past that point. So I definitely recommend everyone to look up your own land acknowledgement after the event. We'll pop some resources in the chat for you to do so. A great one is nativeland.ca. So I highly recommend folks to look up their own land acknowledgement. So today, our land acknowledgement goes around Ontario Tech, since majority of our planning persons are in this area. So this land is owned by the people of Mississauga's Otsego Island First Nations. This is where our university is situated. It's the traditional territories of the Mississaugas, a greater branch of the Anishinaabe Nation, which includes Algonquin, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. Many of us are settlers, migrants, or descendants of those who were forcibly brought to this land. And we are here because this land was colonized and continues to be colonized in these systems that we have in place. We used a land acknowledgement to recognize and acknowledge that this land will be and continues to be the home of Indigenous peoples, and it's very important to move forward together in reconciliation and kindness and respect. And again, I encourage everyone to take a moment to look over the history of the lands that you're currently situated on, because they all have a distinct history.
So now a few important notes for housekeeping are, please keep yourself muted at all the times that you are not speaking to reduce the level of feedback heard. And we also welcome you to turn on your cameras and engage with the presentation using the chat feature. And a SheLead member will be keeping note of all the questions that come through and after the individual presentation, and we can have them at the conclusion, that is the Q&A section. And also for your information that Google Meet does have a closed captioning feature. So if you require this, please go to the bottom of your screen and select that CC option for the captions to appear. And we'll be recording this event to then be posted on our YouTube channel for the further review. And if you wish not to be recorded, please keep your camera off and commentary to the chat section. At the end of the session, we'll be taking a group photo so that we can post it and for everyone who had to participate.
Awesome. And today's event couldn't occur without a few key members. So today it's brought by She Leads, a female empowerment organization. So with each project we initiate, we strive to connect women with their communities and so forth with our slogan, She Leads, She Empowers, and She Succeeds. She Leads is made possible through Enactus, which is a community of entrepreneurial leaders who see business as a way of addressing social issues. And then finally with us today is Let's Talk Science. Shelby will be speaking on their behalf as a panelist today, and we will learn way more about this program later on in today's session.
And now coming to our agenda, it is as following. So our welcome and introduction, which we are doing right now. And this will be followed by our amazing panelists one by one as they share their experiences. And this will be followed by a Q&A period for our audiences. And then finally our conclusion, where we take a quick photo of our community and send you off to Lead Without Limits. And now I will tell you something about STEM. So STEM is one of the most talked about topics in education, but what exactly is? So it stands for, as we all know, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but it's way more than that. I would like to mention that despite a lot of initiatives and a surge of research activity, women still remain underrepresented in all these disciplines. So this is what we call the STEM gap. And it is also unbelievable that still women make up only 28% of the workforce in STEM careers, and men vastly outnumber this STEM careers. So the gender gaps are particularly high in some of the fastest growing and highest paid jobs of the future, like computer science and engineering. So if women and members of the underrepresented groups join the STEM workforce, then definitely the shortage of STEM professionals will disappear. And also, I think the next question that is to be addressed is like what that why women drop out of STEM careers. So, from a lack of support to feeling of exclusion, women in STEM face an abundance of challenges in their careers, which make them at the risk of dropping out of the field. And there are a plenty of barriers that are in the way of their success, and that includes like male-centered structures, gender stereotyping, lack of female role models, and yes, the less family friendly flexibility in the STEM fields. And we believe that with our initiative, we can definitely help the coming generation become more and more aware so that they are ready to enter this field. And even if they face some barriers, they can courageously handle those. I believe and I hope she leads, she empowers, and she succeeds.
Awesome. We're going to start off with our first panelist, Shelby. So she is currently a undergrad at Ontario Tech for environmental biology. She enjoys learning about aquatic ecosystems and how we can best protect our environments. She loves to teach about STEM to others and currently manages the Let's Talk science outreach site at Ontario Tech for the last 4 years, which is crazy to think. In 2020, 2021, she brought STEM outreach to 1,200 youth with the help of her fellow coordinators with 27 university volunteers. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give the floor to Shelby.
Hi everyone, thank you for that introduction. Okay, so everyone, thanks for a small introduction. Good thing my presentation is purposely a couple minutes short for this reason, so we'll be fine on timing. So yes, I lead Let's Talk Science at Ontario Tech. We are part of a Canada-wide STEM organization, and our site does outreach in the Durham region. So the information that I will share with you, I learned while doing some research for a new workshop that we created called Diversity in STEM. So I gave a rendition of this presentation at last year's event, so it might sound familiar to past participants. However, that's probably a good thing because I find you learn more things the second time around. So we'll start with a quick activity. Can you think of a scientist? Just one. Think about what they look like, and if you want, you can pop their name in the chat. Okay, so what we did there was a small draw a scientist activity without actually drawing. So just think about your answer. So was your scientist a male or a female? So this draw scientist activity has been studied since the 60s. When boys and girls were asked to draw a scientist in a study several decades ago, the results revealed a stunning bias. So that study showed a 99.4% depiction of male scientists. So out of 5,000 drawings, only 28 were of female scientists, and all were drawn by girls. So since then, nearly 80 studies have repeated this experiment with over 20,000 students across all grade levels. And the results of these studies were reviewed in a metadata analysis in 2018 by Miller, Nola, Eagley, and Util. So I'm going to share their 3 biggest findings with you. I'll pop a research article in the chat later. Okay, so in their original 11-year study, less than 1% of the drawings collected from boys and girls were of female scientists. This number rose over the decades, reaching about 28% on average in later studies. So over time, more and more girls draw a woman when asked to draw a scientist. And then the second finding is that girls are driving the shift. So girls in particular began to draw female scientists more often. So only 1.2% of girls drew scientists as female in the original study, and that rose to 33% in 1985, and then 58% in 2016, vastly outpacing boys who still draw male scientists nearly 9 out of 10 times. And then the third finding is that both male and female students are more likely to draw male scientists as they get older. So in kindergarten, children draw roughly the same number of male and female scientists, and girls tend to draw more female scientists, while boys tend to draw more male. But by the time they're in high school, students, male and females combined, draw 4 times as many male scientists as female ones. So sadly, this tends to align with the curve of girls self-identifying as smart. That declines with age as well. Okay, and I bet if we were to repeat that study this year, we would still get a greater number. I think there'd be more women drawing female scientists and possibly even more boys. So one thing that we can do to help promote women in STEM is being and having role models. So girls with a role model are more likely to be interested in and pursue a career in science. So now I want to introduce this campaign. The Toronto-based photographer Natalia Dolan highlighted female scientists in STEM, and I think it's a great example of highlighting role models. So the Toronto-based photographer turned her lens to women in STEM in an effort to break down stereotypes and draw attention to systemic barriers women face. She created an amazing storyboard, which I'll pop in the chat shortly, of career profiles. And doing this exposes young girls, even young women, to what other women are achieving, which is pretty amazing. Okay. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to pop the stuff in the chat while I was talking because of how stuff was set up. But I encourage you all to check out this role model article. And then I'll also pop the research in the chat. Yeah, so I just want to highlight the need for role models in ourselves and finding them in others. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. And we'll move on to our next speaker.
Yeah.
Eldrin.
It was really listening to you, Shelby. Really amazing listening to you, Shelby. And next up is Abir. She's a PhD candidate in software engineering at Ontario Tech University. She's also data scientist at Bettercart Inc. Abir research includes like data science, machine learning, deep learning, real-time data analysis, and data visualization. She also has experience as a researcher and teacher assistant for 5 years. So now she'll be presenting.
Hello everyone. So I'm just sharing my screen now. So everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Abi Badawi and I'm a PhD student at Ontario Tech University. I'll start with my education. Currently, I'm doing my PhD in electrical and computer engineering, specifically like software engineering, and I did my master's degree and undergrad in electrical engineering at Arab Academy for Science and Technology in Egypt. My work experience, I'm currently a graduate research and teacher assistant at the Internet of Things lab at Ontario Tech University. And my PhD thesis is more about the artificial intelligence to detect and manage behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia on a clinical demonstration unit. I'm also a teacher assistant and I taught the Introduction to Programming course, Microprocessor and Computer Architecture, and Introduction to Artificial Intelligence. I'm also a data scientist at Better Card Technologies. I started my internship in July 2021 and I'm willing to continue with that. And finally, I was a teacher assistant at Arab Academy for Science and Technology in Egypt for 3 years. I'll start with my story to be a data scientist. So, actually, in my undergrad and master's, I was in electrical engineering department, which is not related much to computer engineering or coding. And my master's degree, I decided to shift to the data science field. I was really excited about it. I was reading a lot about it. It was like the new thing, and everyone is talking about it. So I decided to look what's the science field, what's happening there, explore the field more. And that's what I did. I ended up doing my master's in machine learning and medical data and published 3 papers. Then I moved to Canada, and that was like a huge step for me. That was like 2 years ago. I know that I have like way better opportunities as a data scientist in Canada, and I was willing to like take all the opportunities I can find. And then started searching for a PhD. That took like 6 months. That wasn't easy, like looking all the universities, finding a good professor or supervisor. It took a while, but it was very important for me to know that I just want to do my PhD mainly in software engineering and things related to medical data and machine learning. Finally, landing my first internship, which was also a huge step for me because I wanted to work in the field and see what's actually happening if I'm a data scientist in real life, what people do in the companies, and everything related to data science. So let's talk more about data science. They say that data science is the sexiest job of the 21st century. So, what is data science? Data science is the field of study that combines domain expertise, coding skills, and knowledge of math and statistics to extract meaningful insights from data. Data scientists apply machine learning algorithms to numbers, text, images, video, audio, and more to produce artificial intelligence systems to perform tasks that ordinarily require human intellect. Why data science? More and more companies are coming to realize the importance of data science, AI, and machine learning. Regardless of industry or size, organizations that wish to remain competitive in the age of big data need to efficiently develop and implement data science capabilities or risk being left behind. Hal Barrier is an economist at Google and UC Berkeley professor said that the ability to take data, to be able to understand it, to process it, to extract values from it, to visualize it, to communicate it, that's going to be a hugely important skill in the next decades. So, what you're actually going to do if you are willing to be a data science? We have something called data science life cycle from 7 stages. You start with the business understanding, you understand the concept, what you're actually trying to solve, what's the main idea, and what's your proposed solution. Next, the data mining, you start to gather and scrap the data anywhere. You can find it from websites, from your company, logs, anywhere you can find data that you can start building your model. Then data cleaning, step number 3, and data exploration. Like this part takes 50 to 60% of what you're actually doing in data science to clean the data, extract the features that will help you to build the model, try to solve all the missing values and things related to that to be in the perfect shape for our model. Number 5, something called feature engineering. In this part, you try to extract the important features. So now you got all the features. You don't need all of them. You just need the important features to be the input for your model. Number 6, for the predictive modeling, this is the machine learning part. We apply our models to the data. And finally, the data visualization. And this is very important because it's really hard for people to understand what's actually happening from your side. So if you know how to visualize your output in a really good way, that's going to be the best because you can explain it like in a way everyone can understand. What do you need to be a data scientist? For sure, you need math and statistics, you need machine learning background, statistical model, you need some information between math and machine learning to have a really good background. Second, you need the programming and database. For programming, you need Some programming languages, I always prefer Python. Also, you need some databases such as SQL. You also sometimes need things like Hadoop, Hive to work with big data. And always remember something called cloud, which is like, for example, the Amazon cloud. Nowadays, everyone is using clouds. Number three, the domain knowledge and soft skills. You need to be passionate about the business. You need to be curious about it. You need to know that you're going to be solving a lot of problems. You need to have the skill of problem solver because sometimes like you're spending huge time just knowing how to solve a problem before start working. Right. And finally, the communication and visualization. In this part, you need to be able to engage with senior management, storytelling skills, and for sure, you have to get at least one visualization tool. You need to understand one, and Tableau is one of the most well-known tools. And this part is also the last part in the data science life cycle, number 7, which is data visualization. So the market statistics for data science. So in this field, LinkedIn said that the rate of growth between 2012 and 2017, we can see the top two is machine learning engineer and data scientist. They're a little bit different, but under the same umbrella. So we can see here how it's really growing, the data science. Also, Glassdoor said that 28% demand increase by 2026, approximate 6,000 number of jobs opening, and average salary, and this is all in US, not in Canada, 127,000, and it's going to be the best job in America in 2021, the second. And going back to Canada here, we can see this data I got from the Canada Statistics website. And here we can see the job opportunities available from good or not good. And we can see in the like two biggest provinces, we have British Columbia and Ontario, that data scientists, it's a good job. You will have a really good job opportunities if you're a data scientist. So what kind of steps you need to follow to become a data scientist? I'm going to talk about what I did and what everyone else should do. So you need to start by asking yourself why you want to be a data scientist. It's just not about everyone is talking about it nowadays, so that's like the new thing. You need to understand that if, for example, you don't enjoy coding, you shouldn't be a data scientist. If you don't enjoy, like, for example, knowing that you're going to be stuck in a problem for like a very long time, it's really going to be hard to solve it. If you don't want to spend time solving problems in the code, exploring data, cleaning data, which is like sometimes a little bit boring, you need to consider everything before getting sure that you want to be a data scientist. The online courses and self-learning is a very important part to be a data scientist because it's still a new field. So not all the information you're going to get from your degree in undergrad or in your master's or in your PhD even. You need to keep reading every day what's happening in that field. And in my case, it was the PhD degree because sometimes some jobs requires PhD for data science, but that's like only 20-30%. Just if I'm gonna work in data science and research. But for having just undergrad in software engineering, that will be more than enough, or like even computer science. The resume and websites are a very important part to always update your resume. Have a good website. Sometimes you need it in data science to show your project. And finally, work experience. If you can get some kind of internship in your undergrad, that will be great. What kind of project you're gonna do if you're a data scientist? That's like some kind of project I did. This part is like from my website. You can see here I'm working with medical data, for example, human activity recognition from wearable sensors, detecting COVID-19 from chest X-rays, Tableau dashboard just to visualize the data, working on like funny projects like movie rating prediction. Like nowadays, machine learning, it's everywhere. Like anything you're working with nowadays, you can fit machine learning and AI in it. Finally, life-changing lessons I learned that you never lose hope. In my case, I spent like 5 years undergrad studying something not related to data science at all, but still I decided that I want to do the career shift and it was totally worth it for me. So never lose hope, even if you're not in the 100% the same path you want to be, you can change it anytime you want. The work-life balance, I always appreciate this work-life balance. Don't forget your life. Don't forget to enjoy your life, family, friends, and everything. Work always gonna be there. Do it the right way, but don't just forget your life. And the 30-minute rule, this is a very important tool I learned to learn new things. So you need to spend at least 30 minutes every day learning one new thing. Online course, read something, explore something you wanted to know more about. Always keep 30 minutes every day for things aside from your work or your study. And finally, time management. A lot of people struggling with like your mobile, your social media, you can't focus. So I have this rule that's 60, 15 minutes. I only focus for 60 minutes finishing the job and then taking a break 15 minutes to like explore social media and everything. But I'm not gonna catch my phone, for example, or open anything while I'm working on the 60 minutes. I know that I'm only gonna do that in the last 15 minutes. Thank you all, and if you have any questions, like go ahead and ask me, and this is my email if you want to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abir. And that rules are really helpful. I personally believe, and I believe that these career options gonna help all the high school girls we have in our audiences. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I will stop the presenting and then I will present my screen again and we'll move on to our next panelist. Thank you so much. Our next panelist with us is Lydia. So she is an educator, a science communicator who recently got their PhD in chemical biology at Ontario Tech University, where she currently works as a educational developer. So if you're on North Campus at Ontario Tech, you might see her around. She's been able to combine her passion of STEM with education, and recently launched her website. If you folks have a moment to look at it, is outstanding. We'll also send it to you in a post-event email, which it entirely aims to support students and promote accessibility with STEM education. I'll give the floor to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't have any slides to share. I'm going to do this a little bit more casually and conversational. So I hope that's okay with everyone attending. But I'm so excited to be here and talking with you and connecting with the other panelists as well. And thanks as well for that kind of introduction. My name is Lydia, and I go or use the pronouns she, her, hers. I guess I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and my background and my STEM story and how I got to becoming an educational developer, having a very STEM heavy background. And hopefully by the end of this, I'll be able to show you that there's no one right path in STEM. We can all really pursue our journeys and embrace whatever it is that we're interested in. And as long as we do stuff that we're passionate about, things will turn out well. So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in a small country in South America called Venezuela. And I moved to Canada about 10 years ago to pursue post-secondary education. Now, I was really thinking about when did I know that STEM was for me? And the answer is really early on in my life, which is surprising because I'm actually a first generation scientist. I wasn't really exposed to science as much as a kid, other than the basic curriculum I had in school. But it's really amazing how science has just been something that inherently has been part of my life, even if I wasn't aware of it at the time. I remember sitting in grade school, and that's when we started learning a little bit about, really basic science. It may have been something like environmental science and like, what is the environment? And I was just so amazed by everything I learned. I thought the world around us was so cool. I thought our bodies are so cool, and the way our brain works and how we learn was so cool. And I'm happy to say that a lot of this like spark that I feel when I talk about science or think about science really hasn't faded so many years later. And it was, again, at this very young age, as I was starting to understand kind of what science really was, that I became so in love with it. I would say biology was one of my first loves. And I was just so curious ever since I was a child. I just would look at the world around me and I was like, why do things work the way they do? And what happens if I do this or if I change that? And without knowing it, I was really kind of embarking in the scientific journey using the scientific method. I didn't know what any of that meant at the time, but I was just mesmerized by this whole process. And it's, again, amazing how much I wasn't aware of it at the time, but how that really became the start of my STEM journey. Now, I didn't have many role models at the time, unfortunately. But I was in the back of my mind always aware of the fact that I wanted to pursue a career in STEM. I just didn't know what that was just yet. And it wasn't until I got to high school that I started really thinking about, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And I decided that there were really kind of two main options that I was interested in. One of them was to become a medical doctor because I was really interested in healthcare. And the other was to be a biology teacher because I am passionate about education, and biology, as I mentioned, was one of my first loves when it comes to STEM. But I was really surprised to see that there weren't any role models that I could turn to for support or advice. And that was really difficult for me to deal with at the time. When I thought about scientists and the way scientists were portrayed, let's say in the media, which was how we as young adults sometimes get our information, what we normally saw was, and still see to this day, is, scientists being portrayed as white males and a very specific subset, usually very stereotypical, white hair, glasses, kind of that Einstein look. And even earlier today, I was working on a project and trying to look for images of like clip arts of scientists, and over half the images were still that stereotypical image of a scientist. And again, this was really hard for me as a young, impressionable woman, because we like to see people that we can relate to. And no one as a scientist that I knew or saw in the media or any other outlets looked like me. And that was sad, to be completely honest with you, because there's some comfort in seeing people that we can relate to, and seeing what they've accomplished, because it gives us a sense that, well, if they're similar to us in some ways, it could be the way they look, or we have some other similarities, we feel like we can accomplish that too, right? When we see people who've succeeded, and we relate to them, we feel like we can get there as well, even if our journeys are a little bit different. So it really bugged me from a young age that there weren't any role models that I identified earlier on. And it wasn't until much later in high school that I met some instructors who had background in science. And I was like, you know what? Women can do science, and it's okay for me to pursue this. And it's okay for me to be true to what I want to do, even if I'm facing a lot of comments and criticism, and why would you pursue this as a woman, or this is an interesting field for you to go into as a woman. And these are sadly comments that I've heard a lot throughout my career and that I still hear today. But that doesn't have to define your path, and it's still okay for you to put yourself and your interests above all things, and choose to pursue a path that makes you happy. And that's entirely what I did. Now, I did mention that I kind of had two potential branches that I was interested in high school. And what's really interesting about high school in Venezuela, where I originally was or thought I was going to pursue university, is that immediately after high school, you go into university, but you don't. It's not split into undergrad and postgrad as it is here. So if you want to be a doctor, you don't do an undergrad and then go to med school. You actually go to med school right away. So that was a really big decision to make at 17. It's like, well, do I want to be a medical doctor and go into med school right away, or do I want to be a biologist slash educator? Now, the things that, I guess, circumstances happened, and we ended up moving to Canada just in time for me to start university. And because of the way the system works in Canada, here I had to do an undergrad degree, and I chose biology for 4 years. And then I had the option to apply for med school if I chose. So in a way, I guess the choice was made for me, and that's the way the system works. And I was able to kind of embark in a different journey that allowed me to really experience different things and then make a more solid decision as to what it is that I wanted to do with my life. So I did a 4-year undergrad in biological sciences with a minor in chemistry. At the time, I was still very committed to going to medical school. I was kind of, I thought that perhaps that would be a better fit for me. But it wasn't until I met a lot more scientists and educators who became role models in university that I was able to consider a different perspective, and go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, do I want to be a doctor because this is something that it's really meaningful to me? Or is like, what is the purpose for this? And what is it really that I want to accomplish? And do I really have to make this decision now? Like, what is the rush? And why am I letting outside factors really trying to push me into making a decision now? Why can I not just enjoy this journey and explore other options? So with that in mind, and through, again, an amazing community of people that I met at Ontario Tech, and initiatives like Let's Talk Science, Science Rendezvous, groups like Women in Science, and it's amazing that the She Leads group is also doing events like this, because I feel like through connecting with mentors, role models, and colleagues, and feeling that empowerment, I was able to be more true to my journey and what I wanted to do. And I became less afraid of having to commit, and less afraid of making mistakes and going through the ups and downs. And I think that really led me to the right place. So although I had never considered going into a PhD or doing research, I had the opportunity to do an undergrad thesis in fourth year, and I said yes. I knew nothing about chemistry at the time, but I thought it was a great learning experience. I did 1 year of research, ended up really liking it. I started a master's in 2016, so immediately after I finished my undergrad. And I ended up falling in love with the research project that I was in. And then I ended up transferring directly from the master's to the PhD program. So none of this was part of my original plan. Doing a PhD is not something I had considered, but it's something that in a way allowed me to achieve all the things I wanted. I ended up becoming a doctor, maybe not a medical doctor, but still a doctor. I ended up being able to pursue biology and STEM, and to become an educator and now work as an educational developer. So I guess what I'm trying to share with all of my story, which might look a little bit not like a straight line, because it wasn't, is that it's okay if your journey is a little bit all over the place. And it's okay if you have to try a few different things to find something that you're passionate about. For me, I identified STEM as being one of my passions early on, but I didn't know what that was going to look like. I thought I did at some points, but that idea changed, and that was okay. So happy with the path that I'm in right now and the role that I have as an educational developer. And it's funny because to this day, I still face some criticism as someone who did a PhD in chemical biology, doing drug development and nucleic acid chemistry, now working in the field of education. It's almost as if people think that there's only one path again. So you have a PhD in chemistry, you should work maybe at a pharmaceutical company or just teach chemistry, and that's it. And that's not the reality of it. You know, there's so many careers in STEM, and there's so many things that you can do with a career in STEM. So don't let people limit your path. Don't let people tell you that there's only one way to do things. There really is no right way. Everyone's paths and journeys are unique. So I think we should just embrace that. So I guess a few messages I want to leave you with are, first of all, again, it's okay if your path is not all figured out from the start. It's okay if you have to go through ups and downs. We all face unique challenges, unique opportunities. So let's just embrace our journeys. Second, be flexible. And this is very important. It takes time sometimes for us to know what we want to do. It's deciding what career you want to go into. That's a really big decision to make. It's a really big decision to make early on and in any stage of life. So just be flexible if things change and your circumstances change. But as you do this, also be sure to be kind to yourself. Sometimes it's really easy to look at people and want to compare ourselves to others. And growing up, I always heard this: don't compare your backstage to anyone else's highlight reel. And I cannot agree with that more. Sometimes we look at people that we admire or aspire to be like, and we're like, well, they are in this amazing place and it seems like they have life figured out. It's okay if you don't. Sometimes you're looking at someone's like chapter 500 and you're sitting here in chapter 1 and you're like, why am I not like them? And it's like, well, you have 500 pages of your chapter that you haven't lived through yet. So it's okay to take it one step at a time and just go through your journey. And last but not least, just be unapologetically you. You know, we all have very unique journeys. And sorry, give me 1 second. Of course, this had to happen at least once, someone walking into your door as you're giving a talk. So apologies for that. But be unapologetically you. So it doesn't matter, again, what field you end up in or what it is that you want to do with your life. If it makes you happy, just go for it. Surround yourself with positive, empowering people that make you want to be better and make you want to achieve the best version of yourself. And again, when we're passionate about what we do, I think we do great work. So I guess those would be the main lessons I've learned as I've gone through my quite adventurous path to pursue a STEM career. And as I guess the slide says, I am currently trying to really keep that STEM love alive through my STEM Enthusiast platform. So I can pop that in to the chat if anyone's interested. But I launched a website back in 2020 that really hopes to, again, support students in their academic journeys and really try to talk about STEM and science communication. So I'm also on social media if anyone wants to connect after the event. But that was my somewhat not so brief, I'm just looking at the time now, but version of, I guess, my story. So thank you for letting me share and for giving us this platform to use our voices and hopefully inspire some people.
Thank you. I have a list of questions for you afterwards. So we'll move along to the next panelist and ask those questions at the end.
Sure. So our last panelist of the evening is Sydney. Sydney is in her final year of software engineering at Ontario Tech University. Her post-graduation is to take her experiences of music and theatre and apply those to the career in technology. She has a passion for inspiring the next generation of female STEM students and volunteers across the campus in organizations such as Women in Engineering and Engineering Outreach. So very excited to listen to your presentation.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. So yeah, as stated before, my name is Sydney. I use she, her pronouns. And yeah, I'm in my 5th and it better be my final year of software engineering. I'm excited to get out into the workforce. But for now, I'm going to talk to you a bit about leadership and what that might look like in STEM, particularly in high school and in undergrad university. So a bit more. So yeah, so I've volunteered and worked with Engineering Outreach, which is our outreach program with engineering. So we get to talk with a bunch of kids around Durham and York region and teach them different STEM principles. So I got to be a program instructor there. I got to make my own curriculum and then teach it to a bunch of different students, primarily grades 5 and 6. So that was really neat opportunity that gave me the opportunity to work on my communication skills, my public speaking skills. I've always been kind of trying to work on those. I remember in grade 1, our schools would do these public speaking competitions where you'd write a speech. It'd be like 1 minute to 5 minutes long, depending on your grade. And in 1st grade, I got picked to speak in front of the entire school. And I started crying so hard. They had to call my mom that day and be like, hi, she's crying. We can't get her to stop. Can you help us out here? Because I was so terrified of speaking in front of people. And so I worked on that throughout high school, and doing outreach really helped with that. We're speaking in front of kids. You guys know, grade 4, grade 5s, they're pretty ruthless. If you mess a word up, they're going to be like, that's not the right word. So doing different activities like that and teaching science to kids was a really cool opportunity to practice that skill, which is a great leadership skill. I'm also involved in the Women in Engineering Society as a mentor. So that's where we pair a 1st year or 2nd year student with an upper year student, so 3rd, 4th, 5th. And we basically get to work on different things like, hey, how's 1st year going, and working through all of that kind of fun stuff that I'm sure in high school you're pretty excited to get into. And then also just to have another girl in engineering that as you folks have already figured out, there are a lot more men in engineering than there are women. So it's really nice to find other women and stick together and kind of have that camaraderie that we can kind of have. This year, I'm also the Vice President of Internal Affairs for Engineering Students Society. So what internal affairs means, because I didn't know what it meant at first, is basically I get to kind of help support the other students of the other clubs and societies. So I get to talk with the Women in Engineering. We also have Engineers Without Borders or our racing team. So I get to kind of talk with them and see what help they need and bring that to the Engineering Society and be like, hey, our design teams are feeling really left behind this year with COVID. They need some more support in maybe some advertising or something like that. So being able to hear their concerns and be a voice for them in our engineering society is pretty much what the internal affairs does. And then I'm also kind of a general volunteer around campus. So being a part of the ambassador program around campus, and then also our engineering ambassador program. That means I get to talk at open houses. So if you guys want to come to our experience day tomorrow, you can see what engineering is like. I'm sorry, I have to do that little plug there. But so these are all really cool ways of getting involved, and you guys are going to hear, oh my goodness, see, that's that gendered language I keep trying to avoid right now. So you folks are going to be hearing a lot about this term, getting involved, and you probably are already doing it right now if you're a part of your student parliament, or if you are in a club at your own school. So like the debate club, or what are the clubs we had? I mean, I was in band, so but different clubs like that are the getting involved and the experience that I think really can help towards leadership. So going more into leadership, I asked my mom this morning, I'm like, hey, I have to talk about leadership today. What should I talk about? And she's like, well, there's different personality traits that leaders have. And I'm like, okay, tell me a couple. So she's like, oh, like they're outgoing, they're good at communication, they're relatable. I'm like, okay, interesting. And she's like, well, I guess you might not be able to talk about that because you can't really change your personality. But I thought, okay, well, that's not super correct, because I mean, you think back to me when I was in grade 1, and that's sitting in the hallway crying, bawling my eyes out that I don't want to speak in front of the school, to now where I'm speaking to all of you or speaking in front of my school at an open house. You are able to change and work on those different soft skills, as you will hear. So just those different leadership skills. So like communication, that one is a skill where speaking for or to students in different situations. Leadership, or of course, leadership is going to be a good skill to have. But being outgoing, I was never super outgoing, even in my friends' social circles. Outgoing is not the term that they would use for me. I'm a little more on the reserved side, but you would never know it in situations like these. Let me take a moment to gather my thoughts here. I was so nervous for today. I wrote down 5 different topics, so I might be switching from topic to topic here a little bit. So going forward with the leadership theme, I want to leave you with a couple just kind of tips and personally what I think a leadership and what a leader can be. So one of the big things that I always say that a good leader would have is being able to know when to step up and be that hoorah, I am leading this team. I am the face and the voice of this team, and knowing when to kind of step aside and be the number 2, or maybe assist somebody else who it is their first time taking the lead, and helping them ease any fears or share their past advice. And just kind of being able to recognize in that moment when it is the time for you to be in charge, or when it is the time for somebody else to be in charge, and to kind of assist them with any of the things that they might need there. And finally, for also being a leader and as a woman, being able to be again, like Lydia said, like unapologetically you, like you know who you are and you know what you stand by and what you're here for. And if this is what you truly believe in and what you are trying to communicate to everybody, then that's it. And you know that's what you want to be doing, and just trust yourself and your gut, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. So I will leave you with that cluster of information there. And I'm sure there will be lots of questions after this. So thank you so much for listening to me.
And thank you, Sydney. That kind of concludes our panelists, but we are going to head into a question and answer period. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask any of our panelists, all of our panelists, you can pop those into the chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature and we will call on you. If not, I have tons of questions that I can ask myself, so I will give you guys space first. I feel like people might be typing, so I'm just gonna leeway with some of the questions that I have. Oh, awesome. So I have one here for Shelby. Do you have any advice for somebody that wants to go into software engineering?
I think those for Sydney, so I'll pass it along to her.
Yeah, so personal advice that I have for somebody who's looking to go into software engineering is if you haven't enrolled, or if your school offers it and they have a computer science class, I would encourage you to take that, just to kind of feel out what programming is like. And I'm assuming you all have already taken that class if you're interested in it. But I think just kind of exploring the different programming languages, doing your own personal projects outside of school or what you're being graded on. Because I know I find when I'm working on graded assignments versus personal projects, I have a little bit more fun with the personal projects. So just kind of exploring that and doing some of the stuff on your own free time is definitely a great way to be ready for software engineering.
Definitely. The next question I have is from Isabel, and it's for all our panelists, so any of you can answer. What is a challenge that you have faced in regards to being a woman in STEM? So you just talked about it a little bit in detail, but if you want to add more detail, go for it.
I guess I can get us started. I guess just sharing my personal experiences, and I think I mentioned a little bit about this, but there's just a lot of stereotypes and a little bit of stigma too. Like people have this idea of what you should be doing as a woman, and even once they accept that you're in STEM, it's like how you are supposed to be living your career as a woman in STEM, if that makes sense. I've heard a lot of comments throughout the years, things that some of you might relate to, like, oh, you're too pretty to be in STEM, or why it sounds so silly to say out loud, but people say these kind of things, and it's funny that sometimes they, I think, mean them as a compliment, but it's not. Or like, oh, I can't believe you're that smart, or I can't believe that you would actually have a PhD. Like, what is that supposed to mean? Why wouldn't you believe that? Like, what is it about you looking at me that makes you think that I cannot accomplish these things? And it's a lot of the bias that sometimes we grow up with and are exposed to, right? The way that, again, scientists are portrayed and the way women are portrayed in things like media. So I think for me, it's just, it gets exhausting to deal with comments like that, and it can be a little bit discouraging. Sometimes you're trying to, share some awesome science thing and people just care about the way you look, or they just care about some other trivial thing that is not really what you are trying to talk about. And especially frustrating for me personally in my journey when they wouldn't do that to a male. So like when you're talking at a conference and someone interrupts you, and it's like, if I were a male standing here, you wouldn't do that to him, so why are you doing that to me? So I think for me, it's kind of those small annoying comments that have forced me to grow really thick skin. But I just wish I didn't have to educate you every time, and that people could just do their homework and leave their biases at the door and not have to put us through this. So that's kind of what I have to share.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a really big aspect there that you touched on, and it's kind of universal across different kind of disciplines. The thing of, oh, you're too pretty to do X, Y, and Z, which the correlation between looks and intelligence doesn't make sense. I thought Legally Blonde showed us that anything is possible. But did any of our other panelists want to kind of touch on that question from Isabel?
I can touch on a little bit. Not so much the woman part, but the in STEM part. I went into studying biology in 2016. And then a couple of years in, I switched from the human side of biology to the environmental side of biology. So I help study lakes and invasive species and how to best protect our environment. And when I talk to my relatives who were farmers, were factory workers, they don't understand. They're like, what is this? Because before I told them, like, yeah, I want to be a doctor. I want to do this stuff. They're like, yeah, good job. That's great. Now, when I'm talking about research and keeping the environment healthy, they don't quite get it yet. And I think that has to do with it's not a well-known part of STEM. It's not a well-known career or an option. So I find when individuals aren't knowledgeable on different aspects of STEM or the lesser known stuff, that can be a hindrance to yourself because it lessens your role models and people to look up to kind of in that respect. So a little different take on that question, but that's where my challenge has been, is within family. And family means a lot to people, so it can come down pretty hard.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think there's these subsections of STEM. We typically think of the main ones, engineering being a huge thing at Ontario Tech. But when we get into like these niche fields, people don't think about them when they think of traditional STEM, which is crazy because of the things that I've seen come out of your discipline. The tank that we currently have under Ontario Tech, which I haven't been able to see, but from photos looks amazing. Those are things that get people really interested into the STEM field, is those niche aspects of it. I do have a question for Abir. I was wondering if you can tell us what excites you about being a data scientist.
Okay, so I think the main thing that with the slide I showed you about the projects that basically can work in anything. So there's like one of the questions about what if I'm stuck in a job that I don't like for the rest of my life. It's not the same as a data scientist because every day you can explore a new thing. You can be in a new field. Like currently I'm doing my PhD with medical data. I'm working in a hospital and I'm doing an internship in a company related to grocery data. So I can do whatever I want since I have the same skills I need. So that's like the main thing for me, that you just can explore whatever you want. It's really interesting, the point that you're doing something that needs you to explore new data, read more things, like read research paper to answer the questions. For me, the scary thing, like ending up with this like boring job from 9 to 5, doing the same thing over and over again every day, that was like the worst thing for me. So in my case, I always wanted to do something that I know that I would be exploring something new every day in my field.
And I think that kind of trails into one of the questions we had from our audience, which is it possible to choose more than one path? For instance, if you want to be a mathematician, however, you love engineering, how do you kind of balance all these different interests that might not seem like they're interconnected? And this is to everyone, but since you're unmuted, why don't you go first?
So I really think that was one of the, like, when I was young, a lot of people told me if you went to electrical engineering, you're stuck there, and that's it. And I was really scared, like after I finished my 5 years undergrad, like I don't know what I'm doing now. I don't like it, and I thought that's it. It's over for me. But whenever like I grow up seeing people that they're actually old and they decide just to career shift whenever they want, start a new thing, and they do it way better than people with undergrad degree and who have the whole package, as they always say. So if you're in a field and decided to shift, it totally goes for you. for me, to be honest, currently I'm doing my PhD and I still don't know what I want to do. Like I'm still not sure if I want to continue as like a professor in the academic field or I want to shift to work in a company. I still don't know the answer. So what I'm doing that I'm just exploring all the options. I'm doing research. I really look to find an internship to experience how it looks like to work in a company. So you can see all the options you have out there and finally decide the one you really like the most.
Awesome. I think that really shows the interconnectedness of data science. How about other folks? What are interesting things about yours that lets you move across disciplines?
I can share a little bit. So, and then I'll pass it over to Sydney. So, in environmental science, at least, it's very interconnected. So I'm doing a minor, which means I'm taking a subset of courses in chemistry, in addition to all of my biology courses. And that is really useful with environmental chemistry, because if you look at contaminants in lakes and water systems, that's chemistry. That's like, how does this molecule differ from others, and why does it stick in water? Why does it go into fish fat? Like, where does it go in organisms? That's chemistry, as well as physics and air currents. So pollutants tend to move toward the Arctic and Antarctic because of the air patterns, which I didn't know about until last year. That's wild to think about. And just to know that environmental science, for example, is very interconnected. You think you're only doing biology, but you're not. So for me, that's one thing I love about biology and environmental, is because I don't just have to do one thing. I can like everything and be mind blown at how it's all connected.
Yeah, and Sydney, did you want to add?
Yeah, so I really just want to stress this point, that you can change your mind after you do an undergrad. I know that was one of the like most terrifying things for me going into it, was like, oh, like I've picked software engineering, like this is it for the rest of my life. I'm just sitting at a computer all day programming, but that is totally not it. And I didn't figure that out until like my second year of university, when I was talking to this girl. She was in communications and we were chatting, and she's like, oh yeah, I took electrical engineering back in my undergrad. I'm like, but you're in communications, you can't do that. She's like, yeah, you can do whatever. Like, just because you took your undergrad in one thing doesn't mean you can't explore other career opportunities. Which is one of the great things that I find about software engineering, is that because you're dealing with technology and programs, that is applicable to every single field. You can go into banks, into medical, into anything. And then also with engineering, you don't only learn just like the technical math and science of it, you also learn things like economics and ethics, and you learn how to be a good, not just a good employee, but like a good learner and problem solver. And that is applicable to every single field. So getting like the education and having that base knowledge can be applicable to anything and anywhere, and you can go anywhere, which I know I am not planning to go straight into software engineering, just hard coding. I'm kind of looking into maybe some other things to kind of explore, because who knows what I want to do, but I know for sure it's not going to be the same thing for the next 40 years. That's 100%.
And STEM in itself is just evolving every day, and there's different, as technology keeps advancing, same with computer science. What you're learning now, down the line, there's going to be new technologies and new things. You're learning the foundations to understand new technology that's coming that way. And I think that kind of links to my next question. I'm going to throw it to Lydia. What future do you see for social media getting younger generations interested in STEM?
That's an awesome question. And this is one of the things I love the most is science communication and how we can leverage social media to engage the younger generation. So personally, I think it's a great tool. I know social media sometimes gets a bad rap, but I think if used correctly, it can be an amazing tool to help us connect with the younger audiences, because that's what they're doing. That's, you have to meet people at the level that they're at, and you have to meet them with tools that they're currently using. So I follow so many amazing scientists on social media. Actually, we have a recent PhD grad from Ontario Tech, Sarah Habibi, who you might have seen on social media as Science Bay, and she does amazing science communication videos and like fun things for kids and high school students. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you look up Science Bay. She's on TikTok as well. So again, it's just being willing to meet people using the tools that they're currently using. And from what I've seen in my brief experience in science communication too, people respond positively to things that they understand. So when you take science and you break it down to a level, and I think that's part of the mission of Let's Talk Science as well, and other initiatives like Science Rendezvous, is like when you make things like STEM accessible, people understand it. You can't really connect to something you don't understand. So I definitely think it's an amazing tool, as I've said several times already. And I think that if it's something that you're interested in, look for role models on social media. I guarantee that there are people out there who are doing things that you might aspire to do and who are sharing their experiences and their journeys. And you can learn so much through other people's stories. So check it out.
I have so many questions, so I'm gonna cut it off there. But I'll throw this to Abir and Lydia. Is it worth, one of our students was asking, is it worth spending time on working on getting your master's and your PhD? Do you think that getting these betters your chance at getting good jobs?
It depends on the job that you're interested in pursuing. Some jobs will require you to have a master's or PhD. For example, if you want to go into academia and you want to be a professor and do research, you're usually required to have a PhD. So think about what career you might want to see yourself doing or pursuing, and whether it requires a PhD or not. Now, that doesn't mean that a PhD or master's is not valuable otherwise, but it might not necessarily guarantee for you to get a better job. In some fields, having a master's or PhD is actually not as desirable when it comes to finding a job, because usually means you get paid a bit more, but some employers would actually not hire you because they have to train you anyway. For example, in industry, some positions, like they have to train you anyway. So they would rather just get someone right after a bachelor's, train you, and they unfortunately like pay you less because you don't have those credentials. And that's just, I'm being just really honest about the reality of the job market. However, I think the true value of a master and PhD, and that was my experience, is in all the skills that I've learned in this journey and how transferable those have been to any job that I've worked basically since undergoing I guess grad school. So I guess there's no one answer. It's going to really depend on the field. So look into what it is that you want to do. Look at the requirements and prerequisites for those type of jobs and what credentials people in those jobs have, and then kind of go from there. But if you're solely going to do grad school just to get a job, you're likely not going to enjoy it. So I definitely recommend that you think about it before going down that path.
Yeah, and I think you can say that similar to undergrads as well. We definitely sometimes devalue college in the workforce, and those are completely valid paths, even when you're looking at STEM, because you need that real world experience. So even when looking at taking your undergrad at different institutions, thinking about the various different options that you have, that isn't a linear education path. Some of our speakers today and myself, our education paths were not linear. I'm in my 5th year now. I've been with the institution for 6 years now. And I don't see that as a negative. I see that as a plus, because I've learned so much about my professors, and they've gotten to know me. I've gotten so many opportunities for being here for such a long time. And so school is not linear. I'm going to throw that question also for Abir, because I know you are a PhD candidate. If you want to speak a little bit about that.
Okay, so like I think like Lydia, you covered it all, but I think I just want to point out one very important point. You need to know what's the drawbacks of doing your PhD. So sometimes people go into job market after finishing undergrad that give you benefit of the years of experience. For sure, like having income stable and everything. So there's some drawbacks for PhD. For me, it's totally worth it in only one case, or actually two cases. Case number one, if it's going to help you in your job. So in my case, why I actually thought about PhD to be a data scientist, Because once I moved to Canada, I did what Lydia said. I was checking all the job description, and I like found that 50 to 60% from the jobs I want to work in, they always mention preferred PhD. So I know 100% before doing my PhD, that's going to be a huge plus in my field. But to be honest, if I just want to be like coding or doing something in any company not related to data science, maybe it's going to be a drawback for me because usually they don't want to have a master's and PhD for like a job that only requires undergrad. You're like too much for the job. And the second thing for me, if you like the field, like the research for some people, they hate it. They hate research, they hate teaching. So don't do that if you don't like it. Don't just do it because everyone is saying, okay, let's have a master's or PhD. Because sometimes it's really annoying, like teaching a class, repeating the same things over and over and over. That's not really fun for a lot of people. I really enjoy it, and that's why I really hope I can continue teaching. I like what I'm doing. But if you don't like it, if you don't like spending a lot of time writing a research paper, just Googling all the information, doing a lot of experiments that are not going to work. So this is like really not a really great experience for a lot of people. So don't join masters and PhD if you don't have the skills you need to be master's or PhD student. But if you like it, like aside from where you want to work, where you want to do, go for it. If you're just enjoying the field more than working in a company, go for it 100%. Like for me, I enjoy teaching, I enjoy research, I want to do that. I don't want to end up having a job from 9 to 5. This is not my goal in life. But again, that's me. So I want to do what I like. If you enjoyed 9 to 5, go for it for sure, 100%.
And again, if you finish your undergrad, you don't automatically have to go into PhD, masters, and all that. You can take time, go get some real world kind of experience, and then come back to school. We have a lot of I don't want to call them older, but those who don't fit the typical mold of what you see for a student. We have a lot of those at Ontario Tech because there isn't one image of what a student looks like. You can be any age, any gender, anything really, and still be a everyday learner and learning those new things. One of our presenters today talked about learning one new thing every day and just keep building that repertoire of knowledge. I'm going to throw it over to Shelby. We had a question in the chat for you from somebody who's interested in environmental science. So would you recommend this field? And is there anything that you would advise or some highlights in your field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think looking to the future is almost undervalued in the job. Like coming into school, you don't necessarily always look to the future. And for environmental science, it's looking pretty good. So there's lots of predictions that there's more jobs in environmental in the future, and there's going to be a greater need because, as we know, climate change. And so there's going to be a shift, hopefully, with industries, and you're seeing it already in municipalities and communities to really get a holistic view of things. And that includes bringing knowledge from scientists, from Indigenous communities, from people who aren't scientists, and putting it all together. So I think, yes, in the future, environmental science is still growing in the job market. You for sure could look into that. My specific advice for you is to pick a component of environmental science that you like right now and see where it takes you. You might not stay in that component. You might like different things. That's okay. My other advice is to try to get those involved opportunities. Try and do an internship. Try and test things out in a lab if you have the opportunity to. Really make connections with any teacher, college, university that you can learn from. I think that's really important.
Yeah, Bill Job.
So I would like to ask a question from all of you, just a general one. Like, can you tell me about your hobbies that may or may not have contributed in your part of being in STEM? Just a general one.
I don't mind going first. So, I've always played soccer, so that is my diehard hobby. I always do it once a week, except during COVID because of rules. But that's always been my activity to relieve stress. Uh, so I highly recommend everyone have one of those, whether it be sewing or a physical activity or just movies, even. I don't know. So that's mine. And then my other hobby, kind of hobby that I really liked was science communication. So it was actually getting into Let's Talk Science, volunteering in classrooms, going in and just teaching about paper airplanes and how they work, or like the conditions of Mars and all of these weird things. That was my hobby. And then I kind of wrapped it into more than a hobby now. So now I actually run it. But those hands-on experiences are amazing.
I think for me, this is kind of funny, but I've always been really into like creative artistic stuff, even though I don't think I have like a supernatural talent for any of that. But growing up, I took piano lessons, I did ballet, I took art classes. And again, I'm not particularly skilled in any of those things, but I just always enjoyed kind of letting out my creativity. And I think as I got into STEM, I really started including arts into STEM, and then we call it STEAM sometimes. And I guess I've used a lot of that creativity in the STEM enthusiast platform, like creating resources like science notes or diagrams, and it's kind of merging that creativity and art with the sciences and the science communication. So yeah, I guess those would be it for me.
Okay, I can go next. For me, I think I really enjoy any outdoors activity. I enjoy exploring anything. So like hiking, canoeing, anything I can do outdoor. That's like the main thing for me. And I think the second thing is like for me more like traveling and things like that. That's like the main thing I really enjoy doing. So if I know that the only thing that really pushed me to work hard, that knowing that I'm gonna travel by the end of the semester or do something big related to exploring a new place, doing a new outdoor hobby. So that will always push me to work really hard just to reach there and just like do what I really like.
I'm also pretty into the arts. Growing up, I was also always in music. I've been in music lessons since I was a kid. I was in theater and I taught theater for a while. So just kind of, I guess that kind of looks more now like maybe taking a longer drive and just, singing out some tunes or waiting for my roommates to leave so I can bust out the guitar and not bug them during exam seasons. Um, and then also, I don't spend enough time on the screen, so I have to play some video games, spend a little bit more time. So, kind of relaxing with Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley kind of thing. But yeah, I think those would be my main hobbies.
Awesome. That was great to hear, folks. I think one thing that and one of our panelists today was talking about, you need to have like a healthy work social aspect. I think Avir had said you need to have a life outside of all of this, which is definitely very important. Right now, I can't show you, but I'm wearing my rollerblades. That's something that keeps my body moving and keeps me moving under my desk, because being online all the time definitely can be like physically and emotionally draining. So we are very thankful that you all stuck around till the end and are still with us here. I'm going to ask 2 questions very fast, and then we will conclude for today. So our next question, it's a little bit more of a deeper one, but what were the main challenges you faced while trying to navigate your respective niches being a woman in STEM? And I'm going to pop that in the chat as well. Yes, Sydney, you do need to add that to your shopping list. I think we had
I love
Shelby
that. That's
first
so
in our
smart.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I love that idea. That's with the rollerblades. That's so smart. I was looking for a treadmill desk. And then I was also gonna answer the question here. So I think personally, one of the main challenges I found, well, I mean, I'm still in school, so I wouldn't say like the top of anything like my career, because it hasn't really started yet. But just kind of in volunteering and getting to where I am with my kind of status in the school, was having people listen to me. There are, there you kind of learn about which peers or which faculty members might want to listen to you more than others. So there are certain faculty members that I know when walking into a room will address the men first, but before addressing me, which is sometimes just the case that it is, and there's not much I can do about it. So kind of navigating and finding who my allies are, who will support me and my ideas and help me be heard, was one thing I really had to find. And another one was in group projects. I found that I was often looked to take meeting minutes, or as much as I love doing them, but creating the PowerPoint slides, and kind of just more like the administrative tasks, which was something I had to, as much as I did actually love doing those parts of the project, have to kind of say, actually, no, I don't really want to do that. I would like to work more on the technical stuff, and just stating like, and not accepting those gender role, I guess, more gendered roles in a project, to kind of let people know, hey, no, this isn't just what I do. I can do other things. I can do the technical stuff. So that's kind of the main challenges I personally found.
I'll throw this question over to Shelby if you want to give it a go.
Thanks. This is a tough question. So for me, I've been very lucky in having awesome role models and having great female professors at Ontario Tech to kind of guide me along. But I had one really rough year. Not gonna lie, it was not good. And I think for me, just realizing that I'm not defined in anyone, like you're not defined by your bad years or your bad times. Like, good things happen, and that is great. So my biggest challenge was in third year. I was not doing good. My mom had breast cancer. I lost a big friendship that meant a lot to me. And I failed the course. It was just not good all around. So for me, it was really good to know that like things can get better. Like if you put your mind to it, you adjust your priorities and try new things, good things can happen.
I think it speaks to the type of person that you are, that you're able to do all of that and still do school at the same time, even though school isn't as important as those things that you were going through at that time. And I do think it speaks to your character and the type of person that you are to go through all that while trying to maintain studies. And thank you for sharing. I think
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'd like to point out that I did 2 third years as a result of this. So that was also the year that I switched from human to environmental. So just to know that like it's okay not to finish everything in your 4 years. Like I'm a 6th year student and I'm totally okay with that. So yeah, it's okay not to go in the guidelines.
definitely. I'm gonna throw that question over to Lydia if you want to give it a go. It might be buried a little bit, but
Sure. Is the main challenge is still on that question, right? So I guess for me is a little bit of what everyone has said. I think that we all sometimes go through like personal challenges, whether it's like health. I had a lot of health ups and downs throughout my academic journey. And there's so many things that we just can't control. So there's obviously a little bit of that on top of some of the biases that we have to face as women in STEM, it just becomes really overwhelming. And I think sometimes, and again, this was my experience, is that it starts to affect to some degree your self-confidence, and then you sometimes start to second guess yourself too. And I think we kind of spoke a little bit about this before, but as time goes on, you feel a little bit more of they call it imposter syndrome, where you feel like the things that you have achieved are not really a result of your skills or your effort, but rather you obtain them by chance. That's obviously not true, but sometimes we feel this way. We feel like we don't belong. We feel like we're imposters. And I think it's dealing with that internalized, I guess, collection of fears and feelings of inadequacy as a result of being told that you cannot do something for so long. And that unfortunately is linked to, expectations and gender roles and things like that. So I think it's kind of moving past those barriers, and realizing your worth and your skills and your ability. And it's sometimes a lot harder to do that internal work than it is to do external work. So I know it sounds like a really big, scary thing, but it's been a lot about those internal challenges as much as it was facing the external ones for me.
Thank you, Lydia. And I thank you all for attending today's event, and special thank to all our panelists today. So now we'll be taking a quick photo of everyone together. So if you want to be included, please turn your cameras on and one of the SheLead member will count us down.
So I'm going to give a moment. If anyone wants to turn on their camera, you're more than welcome. No pressure to do so. We also have your emoticons, so that also works. Give a moment. And then I'll count us down from 3. Hold 3 for a few seconds while I take the snap. And yeah, I will send it off in an email afterwards as well. So I will count us down from 3. Give everyone and me specifically a chance to stare. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. And I got it. And just to kind of wrap us up, I'm just going to be popping a link in the chat for our post event survey. And if folks could take a moment just to fill it out, so then we can continue to adapt these SheTalks to things that you guys are interested in, different elements we can add to these events to make them more engaging for you, help us pick new topics, and things like that. It would be greatly appreciated. The link is in the chat for you. I'll also be following up with an email afterwards. And we will also be in that email providing a list of resources, some from our panelists, to help you get started in your own STEM journeys, along with the recording from today's session. So I saw some people come in a little bit late. You can check out the first half, the second half. And yeah, I'll pass it off to Beljot.
Yeah, so this is basically the end of today's program, and I thank you all once again for being the part and making this program the successful one. And if you have any questions for our amazing panelists or for the SheLeads or SheTalk science teams, please email us at the email. I'll just post it in the chat, and we'll get you in touch with whomever you wish to speak with. So here is the email. And I thank once again to all of you.